Hello and welcome to It Could Only Happen on Earth, the show that looks at some of the most bizarre, thought-provoking, and indeed head-scratching news stories from around the world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as he does every week is Paul Seaburn. Now, Paul, first of all, how are you doing? This should be a great show.
Oh, I am doing great, and I'll be doing better once we get into it because you're right. We've got some great stories for everybody out there. I want to thank all the viewers who are joining us, who are repeat viewers. We've got a number of those, and then welcome to anybody who is joining us for the first time. But however you found out about the show, we hope you come back again and enjoy it.
Likewise, I second that absolutely. So let's delve straight in, Paul. Thunderbird Day out in Pennsylvania. What's all this about? This sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's Pennsylvania, right next door to where I live, Ohio, is well known for Bigfoot, and Bigfoot has a monopoly on the United States as far as cryptids is concerned. We've talked before about the Bigfoot musical. There was a Bigfoot musical in New York and also in Cleveland, Ohio. As a matter of fact, it's unbelievable. It's everywhere. So, and then there's Mothman. Mothman gets the movie. Bigfoot gets the musicals. Mothman gets the movies. But Loch Ness Monster gets all the money, obviously, because of all the business there. How about some other cryptids? So I thought it was really cool that a town in Pennsylvania has started a festival and a day in honor of the Thunderbird, which is a great cryptid we don't hear much about. So for those of you who don't know about the Thunderbird, I'm going to talk a little bit about that and why this area would have honored it as well. So the city is a cool name. It's called Derry Borough. Sounds like something from Ireland, but it's in Pennsylvania. It's in the west southwest corner of Pennsylvania. Has many Bigfoot sightings. I've written about it before, but this time their Mayor Nathan Bundy is his name. He proclaimed February 25th, 2026 as the first annual Thunderbird Day in that area where they residents and visitors they celebrate the legend of the Thunderbird. So uh, Stan Gordon, I don't know if you're familiar with Stan Gordon, long time paranormal researcher and writer. He lives in Pennsylvania, and he is one of the leading researchers on Thunderbirds. He said that uh, part of this is due to a big increase in Thunderbird sightings in Pennsylvania in 2024. And the descriptions, there's like three basic Thunderbirds that people see. One is a giant bird, 15, 20 feet in wingspan. Uh, One is more of a pterodactyl looking creature, like the old pterosaur, actually. We don't use pterodactyl anymore. That was a subspecies. And then something in between. There's half lizard, half bird. Uh, so the and you can't call them dino. I'm talking about the pterosaurs. I remember when I was growing up that we called them pterodactyls. They're not. They're a subspecies of pterosaurs. You can't call them dinosaurs because they're not descended from the original dinosaur, and you can't call them birds because they're not uh, ancestors of our current birds. So I'm hoping that this festival leads to us finding out what the Thunderbird is at least, so we can classify it. So Stan said that there was a couple of sightings in 2024 near Harrisburg, which is the capital city of Pennsylvania. One near Pittsburgh, which is closer to where I live on the other side of the state. So the Thunderbird doesn't discriminate. It seems to be occupying the entire state of Pennsylvania. And multiple witnesses. There was one in Latrobe, and I only mention that because, and the only reason I know where the Latrobe is because it's the home of Rolling Rock beer. And I drank many a Rolling Rock beer when I was in college. So I have a soft place in my heart for Rolling Rock and Latrobe. Had nothing to do with Thunderbirds. But all of these are the 12 to 15 foot dark bird category, just so we're straight there. So Stan also says that there was an increase in UFO activity during 2024, very similar to the situation with Mothman when the Mothman sightings were occurring. But Stan doesn't go any further in terms of linking the two in Pennsylvania, at least. Uh, so this is another American cryptid. It's the indigenous people of the United States of North America were have long talked about the Thunderbird. If you go into the archaeological sites in the U.S., you'll see 4,000-year-old cave paintings of the Thunderbird, and then the later ones, if you see their totem poles of the tribes, many of them will have a Thunderbird on the top. So and they called it the Thunderbird, obviously, because it was huge. When the wings flapped, it made a thunder noise. Many of them also said that there were lightning bolts, either coming from the wings or from their eyes. So scary creature. And we talked about a couple of shows ago. We talked about the creatures that live in the Great Lakes, and there's a Great Lakes link to the Thunderbird. The indigenous people believe that the Thunderbird, I don't have the name for it, the Thunderbird reigned over the skies in North America, and its greatest enemy was the great horned serpent, which lived in one of the Great Lakes. So they competed with each other, like the yin and the yang, over dominance of the North America. They also so they believed, and I was uncertain of this. They believed that the Thunderbirds survived on whales, which is kind of unusual for the central United States. We really don't have any whales and haven't had whales in a long time. But there's also been sightings in Alaska and along the West Coast. So I guess that's where the whales are. More tasty to the Thunderbird is children. So there's a lot of stories of them abducting children and eating them. Scientists, obviously have taken a look at this, and they basically put it into two categories. One, for the indigenous people, they believe that their stories were based on them finding fossils of pterosaurs, and this was their way of explaining it to their people. For modern sightings, they think that it's a misinterpretation of a giant heron flying over, or an eagle that was lost, some sort of big bird. Vultures, vultures have wide wingspan and dark in color and scary. So it's cool. I mean, if it's a cryptid, great. If not, that's fine. It's picked up a lot of references in popular culture. We've got a couple of X-Men characters that are Thunderbirds. There's military groups. There's all kind of military groups that call themselves the Thunderbirds. And then, of course, there's the famous Ford Thunderbird car, which is just was a beautiful car built by the Ford Motor Company. I thought for sure that they named it after the Thunderbird. It turns out, sadly, the story is that the president of Ford Motor Company at the time belonged to a country club that was called the Thunderbird Country Club, and he named it after that. What the country club is named after, I don't know, and I don't think he cared because he made enough money on the Thunderbirds. So one last thing that people think of when they think of the Thunderbird is a famous picture of from the 1800s in the United States of this giant, just absolutely massive bird nailed to the side of a barn, and men standing there, in the Civil War era with their muskets and rifles, making it look like they had captured this giant Thunderbird. Some of them have been changed to show a pterodactyl rather than the Thunderbird. So obviously somebody messed with it. It's been proven that it was a fake picture, but we don't even care about fake pictures anymore nowadays because of artificial intelligence. So all we need, Marcus, is one. We just need one really good sighting, and maybe the festival will bring enough people into Pennsylvania that they'll all be looking for it. Now they know what to look for. They'll find a Thunderbird, and then we'll have something big to celebrate. So remember, happy Thunderbird Day. Remember, it's February 25th, so that'll be coming up next February. Hopefully, we'll still be around, and we'll talk about it then as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. What do you think? Have you heard any? Is there an equivalent maybe in England of the Thunderbird?
No, I mean, I was thinking about that actually as you were speaking, thinking is there not even only in England, but throughout Europe? I mean, there could be, but I'm not aware of any. So, it kind of makes me think, well, it's unique to America. So, if it is a real creature, if you like, then that would make a certain amount of sense, because, otherwise, if it's paranormal, you might expect them to show up everywhere.
Yeah.
As you were speaking, though, I mean, I kind of like this idea. And maybe I've read too many Stephen King books, but it kind of evokes images of small town America, and everybody kind of congregating together. But at the same time, I was kind of imagining myself, how it would feel like to be there. And I kind of then think it almost sounds like the opening to a B movie or an X Files episode where everybody's happy, we're all enjoying this legendary
Like,
creature, and then we pan away and we see something watching them, and then the shadow of this giant bird flies away, and it's real and it's coming. And we spoke about the power of belief. So, perhaps the fact that people are thinking about this, talking about it more, maybe it might manifest. But there is a good point, as you say, though, in seriously, that people will be more aware. So if they do, if ever we're going to capture a picture of it,
yeah.
it's going to be now when everybody's got a camera practically in their hands almost, all the time. But yeah, I mean, you were mentioning about lightning bolts and things associated with it. I mean, back in around the 1800s when that picture was taken, there were a lot of reports from people saying they saw a silver bird in the sky, and they mentioned there was like lightning and flames,
Sure.
and people have interpreted that as, oh well, they meant a UFO. It was a metal object, and it could
Right.
well be, but it could actually be just a legitimate sighting of this giant bird. Which if you think about, the Native Americans would have been familiar with it, but these were people like working on the railroads and expanding west, so perhaps not so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I would like to see more people, like you say, celebrate this stuff. I mean, we mentioned Loch Ness there, but I mean, it'd be great to see like a Loch Ness festival once a year, maybe a weekend or something like that, because I think it's important for community, it's important for researchers, and it's just fun. You don't have to be any more reason
There
than
you
that.
go.
It's just a bit of fun. But yeah, if I was out stateside and I was near Pennsylvania, I'd go and check this out, Paul. I would.
Sure, and it's right down the road from the Rolling Rock Brewing Company, so you could have
Yeah,
a beer. But
absolutely.
you can recognize it because it comes in a green bottle. Still does come in a green bottle, one of the few. So I know of a place in England where if the Thunderbird exists, it's probably in this place. And you're going to talk about that place next, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're not mistaken. We're referring to Cannock Chase, which is not too far from where I am out in Staffordshire. Now, as you say, it's one of the strangest places in the UK, if not the world. I mean, it really has got it all going on there as well. You've got UFOs, you've got ghostly activity, black-eyed children. There's been several reports of black-eyed children and, of course, cryptid creatures. Now, recently, one of those cryptid creatures has been reported more in the opening weeks of 2026 than it has been in recent times. And that's a bizarre sounding creature called the Pigman. Now, as its name suggests, we're referring to a humanoid figure, a man from the neck down, but with the head or certainly the facial features of a pig.
Yeah.
Now, the origins of this creature are almost as interesting and intriguing as the creature itself, according to local legend. And this is similar to the Willowback monster, actually, in California. But that's another story. But yeah, according to legend, at the end of the Second World War, American and British forces, the Cold War started almost immediately. So they were together. They were working on plans for post World War, the post war world. Now, although it doesn't detail why they did this, they were looking at experiments, and they were trying to basically fuse humans with pigs. Now, it doesn't necessarily explain why, because it's not like I struggle to see what the benefits would be, but that's what they did. Legend says they allegedly kidnapped a woman, and they hypnotized her, they drugged her, and they inseminated her with pig and human DNA. They monitored her for about a year, the reports say, and they thought that the experiment had failed. There was no pregnancy, but then when they examined her, she was actually pregnant, but it was severely delayed. Now, whether this is because it's not a normal baby, I don't know. Sometime after a year, she gave birth, and essentially, again, according to legends, it was a normal human being, but with the features of a pig, and you would expect the DNA. So how true this is, I don't know. But the legend says that this pig man retreated into the woods, into the woods of Cannock Chase. And some people say that that there's a facility there. Let me check what it's called. It's a tier tower, Pie Green Tower. Sorry, and this was set up officially to monitor communications with the Soviet communications for the Cold War. However, there's been not only sightings of this pigman near there, but also people report what they describe as government agents loitering around, and so the suspicions are swirling that essentially this is where these experiments took place and possibly where this pig man or pig family are living now, because this was 70, 80 years ago. So if he did exist, why is he still being cited now? Perhaps the results of the experiment gives it some kind of longevity. But there have been multiple reports. Back in 93, there was a husband and wife who were walking along Cannock Chase, and they heard a strange noise in the woods. Didn't think too much about it, but at the same time said, "Oh, shall we? We'll make our way home." So they went to the car. The guy said as he turned around, coming out of the woods was this 7 foot tall pigman creature, not necessarily aggressively, but heading towards them. And they obviously scarpered and they got out of there. And as I say, he described this as features of a pig about 7 foot tall, so you expect quite strong as well, and perhaps intelligent, because pigs are very intelligent. So perhaps that fused as well. I don't know. But yeah, the reports were saying that there's been more sightings and reports of the pigman in the opening weeks of 2026 and has been in recent times. It also said the same report that in the opening weeks of 2026, there's been more Bigfoot reports in the same area than all of 2025. So it makes me think, well, what's happening? One of the researchers said there's a general feeling that things are heating up, is what he said. So it makes you think, well, is it again the power of belief? Is it the end of the times, end times coming, and that's where all this is, the veil thinning? But I don't know, whatever the reason is, it's not just one creature. Again, like you said about Bigfoot sightings in Pennsylvania with the Thunderbird. Again, we've got reports of this pig man, as well as Bigfoot creatures and all the other stuff that happens at Cannock Chase. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the pig man, Paul, but I mean, it's certainly interesting stuff. I don't know how I feel about it, but
I have heard of the pig man. I believe that I've referenced it in a number of writings that I've done. However, I didn't know the origin story of the pig man. So that was new to me. And I'm surprised that we don't have more stories like that. We talk about aliens and humans having intercourse, but not experiments with kidnapped either male or female, mating them with other creatures. So wild, I didn't know that part at all. Everybody references the famous Seinfeld episode with the pig man. That I think that's about the only contact that anybody in the United States might have with a pig man or pig man reference. But Cannock Chase, I love that place because it's such a concentration of unusual things, with the UFOs and the black-eyed children, as you said, and Bigfoot now. This week in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio, right where I'm at, probably about 20 miles from where I'm sitting right now, there have been 8 different Bigfoot sightings within a 1 week period. So it happened too fast for me to pull it together for this show, maybe on a future show if we can figure it out. But those Bigfoot are heading in the direction of Pennsylvania, which is also another Bigfoot territory. So I think, look, the big real estate term, location. Maybe we should spend more time looking at that sometime and looking for links to the location of these particular cryptids and which ones pick a certain area. I don't know. But thank goodness we don't have a pig man here. That's all I have to say.
It is a strange one, absolutely. And like you say, I feel sure that we'll return to Cannock Chase in a future episode. The only thing that it reminds me of, as I mentioned there, is I think it's the willowback monster out in California, and it's very similar origin stories actually. But they used a ram or a sheep and it kind of looks a little bit like the
Oh,
monster from Empire Strikes Back at the start of the film.
yeah.
Really big and woolly and white furred. But that's the only similarity or the only similar case I've heard of in the United States. Now, so the big question is, if this thing exists, is it just one of them? Why is it still alive? You would have thought old age, and who knows about
Right.
that. So we'd expect there could be bloodlines of this creature throughout the UK, perhaps throughout Europe and beyond. But speaking of
Yeah.
bloodlines, though, I mean, you've got a really interesting story about, kind of blood types at least, and it dates all the way back to the flood. So let's delve into
This,
that, Paul.
yeah. When I saw the story, I thought, well, there's no cryptid involvement here or anything like that. But actually, there is. This is a story that covers science, pseudoscience, UFOs, aliens, cryptids, you name it. It's got a little bit of everything, plus biblical archaeology. So, um, it, scientifically, we know that, or medically, that there are 8 common blood types: A, B, O, and AB, and then there's positive and negative for the Rh factor. And I'm not going to bore you with the science behind that, but I think everybody knows it. What we don't know is where that came from. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because a controversial new theory came up just the past week, where one person is linking these 8 common blood types to the survivors of the flood. That would be Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. Do the math. That's 8 people, 8 blood types, 8 people. Now, so you're waiting for what else? What else is behind that? That's it. That's pretty much the whole link that this guy came up with. Oliver Burdick is his name, a Christian influencer, a biblical kind of person. But he has a huge following on social media. So this story, this coincidental numerical situation, is getting a lot of traction. So I thought, you know, it's interesting. I like biblical archaeology, and there's a big search for the ark right now. But blood types, and this, there's a lot of talk about blood types in pseudoscience,
Mhm.
in conspiracy theories, in aliens. So I thought it'd be interesting to see if there might be a link that way as well. So um, all of the people on Noah's Ark, we're going to assume that there was a flood and that there was this ark. The 8 people were all related in some way or another. Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons, obviously. And the biblical story says that the 3 wives were sisters. So, which kind of would make sense, depending on how far back you go. Scientifically, it doesn't matter if they were related or not. It's been scientifically proven that any 2, male and female, can generate all 8 types of blood. So the argument kind of falls apart real quickly right there. But the response to that is, well, blood types were only discovered in 1900, which is true. A guy by the name of Karl Landsteiner won the Nobel Prize for medicine by discovering the blood types, and then later the Rh factors were discovered by someone else. Prior to that, everybody thought that all of our blood was the same. And technically that would make it interchangeable for transfusion. But they kept seeing that transfusions weren't working. So there must be something more to it. And that's where this guy came up with the blood types. In pseudoscience, but this is big in Japan and in East Asia. There's a theory called the blood type personality theory, which says that your blood type determines the personality that you had. Now, I had never heard of this until I was doing some research on this. The There's no scientific proof, unfortunately, and they have tested it. It's a product of the eugenics movement in Japan during some period in history.
Yeah.
Other popular blood type ideas, though, there's also a blood type specific dietary needs. So they say that certain people need different. Your blood type determines what kind of food you like and what kind of food you need. They say that type A people get more severe hangovers. Type O people have better teeth, and people with A have the highest IQ scores. So again, they tested that, and none of that it holds water either. So, and then of course, and I don't want to spend any time on this, but there's the racial discrimination problems that we existed with when transfusions became more dominant in the medical industry. So, but the best one though that we've talked about is conspiracy theories concerning the Rh factor and the fact that a lot of people believe that if you don't have the Rh protein, which determines your factor, then you may be an alien or possibly reptilian or somehow remotely connected to some of the royal families. So wow, that's there's one in particular that seems to be more scientific. People from the Basque region in Spain tend to be Rh negative than the general population of Spain. So, when Basque people are different, they must be aliens. They've done studies on those, and it's just a matter of geographic isolation where they ended up with the Rh negative. And that's kind of where the blood types came from. Scientifically, we've been evolving for millions of years. Sorry to the creationists, but and the blood types were developed to protect us from diseases and from invasions into our body. So it's an evolutionary thing. There is one other one though, the golden blood myth. I hadn't heard of this one. There's only 43 people in the world, 43 known cases of Rh null blood, which is no proteins whatsoever, I guess. And these people are attributed as being magical. Their blood is like worth millions of dollars. None of that is true either. So we go back to Noah. And Noah didn't know any of this. He didn't. Apparently he just wanted to get off the boat with all the animals on it already. And but it does explain one thing, and this is a little known biblical passage about Noah warning all the people on the boat to stay away from the vampire bats. To me, that was a sign that he knew about the blood types. He didn't want them messing with their blood. You didn't hear about that, did you, when you were going to Sunday school?
No, not at all, actually. This is interesting, though. I mean, like you say, I agree with you completely about a lot of the, how do we phrase it, the silly conspiracies that, try and take this and take it where nobody wants to go, really. But the Noah's Ark thing's interesting because, and again, we take this with a pinch of salt as we always do. But I've done some reading a few years ago now, and some guy was saying that, if Noah was given prior knowledge of the flood, so obviously that's from either an angel, or he was saying angels could have been extraterrestrials or just otherworldly intelligence. He was basically making an argument that the ark, because instead of taking, two animals, two of everything physically on board, he was arguing it was almost like a DNA bank. Like we've got the seed banks up in I think it's in North Europe, or it could be in Canada. I can't remember where it is. I'll flash that up. But so we've got every kind of seed, every plant. So if we have to start over, we can. And he was making the argument that Noah's Ark was likely that, where he had DNA of every animal, DNA of every plant, seeds, blah blah blah. So it made kind of sense then, even if he didn't understand it, if he would have samples of every blood type. I'd love to know where the guy that you were speaking about, where his research is based upon, why he's saying that he's tracked these to Noah's Ark, and whether it's just there's no proof there, or he's just kind of decided that. But if somebody could actually say, we found the Ark, like you say, Noah's Ark, and people are looking for it. I know there's been supposed, finds, like in Mount Ararat, for example, and there's places in Turkey, etc. But if they could find that and say, look, there is evidence, physical evidence of every blood type in here or somewhere, then I kind of think, well, that floating DNA bank kind of looks a little bit more probable all of a sudden. But it is an interesting story, Paul. And I'd like you said, I'd like to see some more scientific research instead. Just regarding the blood, though, I completely agree. I mean, I would find it hard to believe that anything other than your environment, how you brought up, all those kind, it's a nature nurture argument kind of thing. And there might be a little bit of nature in there, but I think most of it is the nurturing as opposed to how people act and what the preferences are and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, I'd like to see where further research takes us on that.
I like the Noah's DNA bank idea.
Yeah.
That's a new one. I'm going to use that one. I will give you credit, of course. The All right. So we our stories today are so strange that segues are very difficult to work into the show. So Marcus has one a great story coming up here about ghosts, if I'm not mistaken. So
Hmm.
let's. Is there a medical connection to that? I'm not sure.
Well, no, it's not so much a medical connection. I'll say not physically medical, but possibly a mental health connection to it. I mean,
Okay.
again, something that we've also mentioned a lot in the show is how there seems to be an increase in things, an increase in reports, an increase in sightings. And this
Yeah.
seems to be the same with ghosts as well. More people apparently are reporting seeing ghosts. Now, when we imagine ghosts and hauntings, most people, they want to have a good scare, basically. That's what you evoke in your mind, being a bit frightened and things of that nature. There is a place called, let me just make sure I'm saying this right, Gilnockie Tower, which is near Cannock in Scotland. Now, they do ghost tours there. It's a 16th century building, and it does have all the unsettling, strange noises that you can't place where they're coming from, footsteps, and there's no one there, all the sort of things. But there's been several reports from people who've been on these tours saying that during certain quiet moments or certain parts of the tour, they felt a small hand grab theirs. And there's nobody next to them, but they can feel this hand, not squeezing, not in a nasty way, just holding the hand. One woman actually went on to describe it as strangely comforting, is what she said. And so, it's kind of, you don't often hear about ghostly encounters which provide people with comfort or peace or things like that. But it's not just this story. I did a little bit of digging around, and there's a lady, it doesn't say where she was in the UK, but somewhere in the United Kingdom, and her ring doorbell was going off at all hours of the day and night, and there was nobody there. There was nobody on the footage. And so she had the company investigate, and they came up with all kinds of reasons of what it could be. It could be moisture in the device, perhaps the batteries are just running low, all kinds of things, but nothing that actually, got to the bottom of it. And the ringing continued. What she decided was, oh, no, that sounds terrible. Not what she decided, but the conclusion she came to was that it was her late mother who was trying to communicate with her. She had no actual proof of this. It was just something that she felt. So again, it's kind of like that placebo effect. If that brings her comfort, then that's a good thing. As I say, I don't know. I don't know whether she's managed to actually capture any images on film or not. It's an ongoing thing, but yeah. And there was another story as well of a chap who heard whistling all the time, and not all the time, but around him at certain moments, maybe when things were pressured and things like that. And he similarly said that whistling was his granddad. He recognised the tune, he recognised the tone, and again, it brought him great comfort to know that his granddad, who obviously passed away, was okay. So yeah, we seem to have a lot of stories of people feeling good about ghosts instead of frightened, and it makes me think, well, is this because things are increasing? So we're just hearing about these positive experiences more. But yeah, ghosts don't always have to be scary, basically, Paul. And I think we're seeing a lot of
No.
these things come to the forefront.
Well, good point. Many ghosts are manifest in old houses, or worse, in old hospitals and old mental institutions. So the place that we say we're seeing them in automatically gives a negative connotation and a negative feeling. But ghosts appear in other places too. For example, my favorite places in England, the pubs. Now, a
Oh,
pub
yeah.
is a joyous place. A pub is a wonderful place. I would think that there would, if we could do a study on pub ghost, there might be more friendly pub ghost. Um, Maybe more modern pubs, not the ones that go back to the 15 and 1600s where they were prisons and people were executed out front. But just the old friendly thing. I think that there's something to that, Marcus, and it's more than, as you said, more than the personal story. Well, I my mom did the same thing. She would hear strange sounds, and she believed that they were her husband, my father, comforting her in her time of need. I think everybody has a story like that in their family. I hope they do, because that's a nice story. But um, if there's one, there should be more. And if there's a place where there's more ghosts, that should be a place where we could go and get that warm feeling. Maybe a church that might be haunted. Maybe that's the thing, Marcus. We need a better word for the ghost, the presence of ghost in a friendly place. Haunted is such a negative connotation. Uh, resides, or occupies. I'm sure there's a better word than that, but I think haunted um, is too negative for such an idea. But a great idea, and I think well worthy of more study and contemplation. Maybe we have to talk to the paranormal researchers and get them in the mindset of looking for something that is more open and friendly in the paranormal world, and in the ghosts that they're looking for. Uh, we could be influencing a whole movement here, Marcus.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, I get the fact that things that are scary, certainly from an entertainment point of view, maybe hits harder and it carries further. So I understand all that. But yeah, I think there's room for it all. And I completely agree. The terminology sometimes haunting, it does evoke, bad images and bad emotions and things like that. But yeah, I suspect that these things happen more often than people think. I suppose people often report the bad stuff, the stuff that made them feel terrible. Whereas if, say, somebody hears somebody whistling or something, oh, that's whoever, they just have a quiet moment and perhaps move on. And I can understand that as well, because, like you say, it is personal. The pubs thing is very interesting, though, because as you say, we've got loads of pubs in England, rightly or wrongly, we kind of have a reputation for enjoying a beer, basically. So, you can't walk down the street without tripping over them, really. That's not an exaggeration. But yeah, I mean, I put an article together a few months ago about that. And yeah, you do get the odd ghost, like a nasty old landlord, or like you say, some of these buildings were used to house prisoners. And there's a famous one where I think a chair was caught moving on camera at the same place where somebody had been held before their execution. But you're right, you do hear a silly, playful spirits. Young children, for example, who might took somebody's clothes and then allegedly run off, or just people who used to work there. So, yeah, I think let's hope there is a movement for it, because after all, even if we made contact, or I say we collectively, us, made contact with spirits from the other side and they were playful and mischievous, that doesn't make that any less interesting at all. If anything, it makes the fact, okay, there is something on the other side, and it's not necessarily bad or evil. So
That's right. That's right. I like that. Yeah.
well, I
We're
mean,
on to Marcus.
we will see where this takes us, Paul.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, as you say, I mean, okay, so it's not like a smooth segue in. But speaking of certainly niceness, this chap you're going to speak about is renowned for being an exceptionally nice person. But there could be a chance he's not human, Paul. So what you got for us here?
There you go, Marcus. I think there is a relation here, because we often talk about aliens being evil and being predators. They have the names, and the Transformer, or the Terminator. That's what I was trying to think of. This is kind of a silly alien story, but the people who are being accused of being aliens are you're right, they're nice people.
Mm.
The one of them is someone who, and I'm embarrassed to say, I was not familiar with. I'm not a big football fan. We call it soccer, but not a big football fan. Christian Ronaldo, who apparently goes by his last name, Ronaldo.
Yeah.
He's got a big, long name. I'm not going to pronounce his full name. He's Portuguese, and he's widely regarded as one of the greatest players in history. How I didn't know this, I don't know. He's also one of the world's highest paid athletes. I didn't know that. He's the most famous athlete on ESPN. I think he was elected that. He has 1 billion followers on social media. I didn't know that. I'm really embarrassed. But the thing that caught my eye, that introduced me to Ronaldo, of all things, was a headline. And this headline reads, Christian Ronaldo is so good because he's actually an alien. says ex-teammate Marcelo, who played with Ronaldo at Real Madrid for almost a decade, and says the Portuguese player is definitely an extraterrestrial. Well, now I'm interested, of course. it, there's got to be something to this. So Marcello says that many people think he Ronaldo's only about power, but they're wrong. He's an extraterrestrial. And then I start to do some research. I found out that this isn't the first time Ronaldo has been accused of being an extraterrestrial. In 2017, Francesco Totti, I think that's another player, referred to Ronaldo along with Messi and Neymar. And I know Messi is a player because he plays in the U.S. now. Uh, he called them footballing aliens. But he said that Ronaldo was the head of the other two. So he's a superior alien to the other two. I said, there's got to be something more to that. Then I read an interview of a fan who was asked about this, and the fan says, I, I'm not sure it would surprise anybody really if Ronaldo was found to be from outer space. He was a Galactico when he signed for Madrid from Manchester United. I thought, oh, a Galactico, that's a new alien on me. So I looked that one up. And Galactico has nothing to do with aliens. It means that he's so highly paid that his salary is out of this world into the galaxy. I thought, oh, I'm so disappointed. The our name for an athlete that is paid far too much money is New York Yankee. That's what we call them. So that's pretty much where all the money goes in athletics for pro athletes. So it turns out, Marcus, as I'm doing this research, I can't believe it. Other athletes have been accused of being aliens. So the first one, and this is a guy I'm familiar with, Victor Wembanyama, I believe his name is. He's a basketball player, 7'4" tall, plays for the San Antonio Spurs. He plays like a guard, even though he's 7'4" tall. His wingspan is beyond Thunderbird size. That's how big he is. And none other than LeBron James, who is also a good player in his own right. He accused Victor of being a hidden alien. And I couldn't find any people accusing LeBron James of being an alien, which I would have thought there would be as well. But I guess because of his size, he seems alien-like. Then and I'm familiar with this guy too. His name was Meta Sandiford Artest, who also went by Meta World Peace, and he played in Cleveland. That's how I knew him. His first name was Ron Artest, and then he changed it to all those things. He said in 2013, he told a reporter that he himself was an alien. Now, I don't think anybody followed up on it. I missed the story back then, so I would have followed on it, but certainly. Then, back in football, Guillermo Moreno, who played for Argentina, and I remember this story. I was writing about paranormal at the time. He claimed that he was late for training camp one year because he was abducted by aliens. I don't know if you remember that story. He told everybody. He told all of his fellow players. He told the coach. He told the reporters. I guess he really wanted people to believe that he was an alien. He said that they took out his soul. They analyzed it while he was on the journey that they took him on, but they took good care of him and they brought him back to training camp. Another one, this is a baseball player who I was from, and I remember this story. His name's Jose Canseco. Many times he said to the media and to fans that he had personal contact with aliens, that aliens trained him on a lot of the physical exercises that he used to become the fantastic baseball player that he was. He said aliens disliked Alex Rodriguez, who was his rival. So, wow, that's a good one. Those aliens aren't they're pretty smart. He says that he also claimed that they deleted his Twitter account, which that's a first for me. I didn't know aliens had that kind of power. I know a lot of Twitter accounts that they should get rid of, but that's besides me. He said, and then I loved it. He said aliens told him where to find Bigfoot. And I think he was giving tours, if I'm not mistaken, for a while out west somewhere to look for aliens and also look for Bigfoot. That was his post-athletic career. So I don't know. Is it good or bad if an athlete really is an alien? I don't know. If it's my home team and they're winning, I'm all for it. If they're losing, that's another story. I don't know. Have you heard anything like this, Marcus? And you're making
Well,
a
I mean, like you, I'm not a football or soccer guy. I don't mind watching the World Cup. I've never heard this with NFL players. I mean, Jerry Rice is pretty good. So, you might be able to describe his, but Barry Sanders, he was pretty nifty. Um, but no, I mean, it kind of evokes images of the scene from Men in Black, the movie, where they're kind
Oh
of
yeah,
looking at all these different celebrities. It's, oh, he's an alien, he's an alien. So he's kind of evokes that. But Ronaldo, though, I mean, he's from Madeira, isn't he? He's Portuguese. He was brought up in Madeira, and he was dirt poor. I know that much about him. He really came from nothing. And me and my wife were fortunate enough to go out to Madeira a few months ago, and we were on a tour, and we ended up outside the football stadium where he trained as a youngster, and not even training, just kicking a ball around. And you could see the area, and it was really, poor, basically, and that's where he came from. And so the fact that he's made it big, I think a lot of people really admire that. But as I was saying, he's renowned for being very nice with it. Setting up multiple charities for kids and stuff like that. He's kind of just not forgotten his roots. So with that in mind, if you've got such a nice chap, we've kind of got him and Keanu Reeves possibly, and we might lose Ronaldo because he's an alien. So where's that leave humanity? I'm not
yeah,
sure.
right.
But as I say, I mean, certainly, again, I don't follow the sport, but I know enough to know that the guy can kick a ball and he's bloody good. So
Yeah.
maybe it goes back to that tapping into something again, Paul. I don't know, but we need to be looking out for these athletes and saying we need some kind of alien test. We've got drug tests. Maybe we need an alien
Yeah.
test, Paul.
Yeah. I would be thrilled if aliens were involved with sports. I think that would make the World Cup and the World Series much more relevant, if it were the Galactic Cup
Yeah.
and the Galactic Series. So I I'd like to see more, some DNA studies or something like that. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So the anyway, you've got an alien story though that maybe these aliens are the less friendly kind. Let's put it that way. Certainly less athletic. Tell us about them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to leave this, but we've spoken a lot about aliens over the last few weeks. Like, indeed, we said that it's just not going away. People keep speaking about it. Now, this was a statement which was made back in January, but I feel with further twists in the Trump Willy won't he saga that's happened over the last couple of weeks, which I'll move on to in a minute, I thought we should mention it. Now, essentially, we've contemplated all kinds of reasons for not disclosing information. It could hurt religion, society would crumble, all this usual stuff that people speak about. But a former senior analyst at the UK Central Bank, she apparently has communicated with the Bank of England or the governor of the Bank of England, stating that if the American administration was to release information about aliens, it could cause, she said it would trigger a financial crisis. She even went as far as to say even alien talk among high-level politicians could be enough to cause widespread banking collapses, she was saying. Now, just to quote her, what she said is, the United States government appears to be partway through a multi-year process to declassify and disclose information on the existence of a technologically advanced non-human intelligence responsible for UAPs or UFOs. So she's basically saying that if the world was to find out that aliens exist, and certainly if they were to find out that aliens are here or are coming here or have been here, then it could collapse economies. And she was saying that, basically people could rush out to buy or sell gold and stuff, and that would collapse, essentially people's, the backbone of everyone's banking system. At the same time, she also said that it could happen that gold would just prove to be worthless overnight, simply because people have come to the conclusion, or if it was disclosed, they would know, it would be revealed to them that suddenly they're not at the top of the food chain. Now, it's an interesting thought alone, the fact that, like we spoke about, that there'll be procedures in place for if this kind of stuff ever did happen, even if people don't realize it. Now, we've mentioned a lot about the Trump situation. He's going to make his speech. in a further twist over the last week, the filmmaker, Mark Christopher Lee, who
Mm.
first gave that information and said he'd received that from a Washington insider, he's released a further statement. And what he is saying is that he now believes he was set up. He was given information from a legitimate insider, and he was used to spread disinformation. And he even went on to highlight Lara Trump's comments, saying that that was further to spread disinformation. Now, it's unclear as to why this disinformation is being spread. Maybe they want to delegitimize some researchers or just the subjects in general. But yeah, I just found it interesting that it's rolling on and on and on, this alien talk and UFOs and disclosure. And now we're thinking about, well, it could cripple the economy as well. I mean, so I don't know if people would really care about that. I mean, people kind of turn a nose up at talk of the economy and it's just for rich people. But the fact is, if it did collapse, it would affect each and every one of us, really. So I just find that
Oh yeah,
fascinating, Paul. I mean, almost like a sense of realism, like you say, that we don't really think about that kind of effect.
yeah. You don't. This we talk more about the effect on religion. The if the disclosure of aliens and UFOs, how it would affect the religions of the world. If there's something that out there that would replace Christianity or Muslim religions or Hindus or whatever the religion might be, or even atheism. If they have another god they have better proof to convince atheists that there is an uncaused cause, whatever you want to call it. I'd be more worried about the economy than religion, all the myself,
Yeah.
because I have a personal stake in that. But I I I agree with this, and I think that a lot of the discussion about the powers that be hiding so much from us because they never really get into why they're hiding it other than because they can. But the economic collapse, boy, that's a heck of a good reason to
Mhm.
keep this information hidden. And yet, as I've always said, people who know me know that the first thing I say is there's just too many people who are too bad at keeping secrets for things like this to be kept secret as long as they have been. So, I look at it with a degree of intrepidation, but also with a degree of skepticism that somebody would have used it against another country.
Yeah.
We talk about bringing down the world economy, but it could, just bring down one economy if someone were to say, well, the aliens are on the side of China or they're on the side of Russia. Oh God, well now, we're going to hate them. We got another reason to hate some other person because they have contact with the aliens and they kept it hidden. We could sit for an hour and spin conspiracy theories off of one story, and that's a perfect story to do something like that. So nice story, though. I think that I saw that as well. It's worth thinking about. That's what I like. It's definitely worth thinking about beyond just the two of us and our loyal cache of listeners. So tell your friends, be be worried.
No, I
Be
think you're right.
concerned
Like you
about
say,
aliens in the economy.
yeah, I mean, it's something they don't normally think about, but it is true. If the economy went, it would affect all of us.
Yeah.
And as you say, it'd be life changing as well. But another thing, and we're going to delve into the past now, but another thing that'd be life
Yeah.
changing is if we discovered the existence of Atlantis. I mean, this has been around for
Oh,
centuries. People have been trying to
yeah.
find this place. So recently, though, there's a location, not so much recently, but recently more and more reports are surfacing about this location where people are saying, well, Atlantis could be here. What they're referring to is a place called the Richat structure, which is in Mauritania in West Africa. It's basically in the middle of the southern Sahara Desert. And it was first noticed during NASA's spacewalks and certainly on the International Space Station, and it's sometimes referred to as the Eye of the Sahara. And that's because it's essentially loads of different circles spreading out, and you can see it from space. So it's absolutely massive. It's
Yeah.
about 30 miles wide. Excuse me. And you've got to remember that many people say that we only know of Atlantis through Plato. And they insist, mainstream scholars insist that it was a work of fiction. Now, Plato has repeatedly, stated in his writings that it's not fiction. This is a real place. He might use a little bit of artistic license, possibly, but he was insistent that he was putting across facts, historical facts, and not just myths and stories. And it's not just Plato either. I mean, Solon and Herodotus also wrote of of a land or a kingdom which essentially is Atlantis. So we've got multiple different accounts of this place, and we know that Greek scholars regularly went to Egypt to learn, essentially. While Plato was writing about Atlantis. Now, the Richat structure. Why could it be Atlantis? Well, the fact is that it matches almost perfectly Plato's description, and it was likely. New research is suggesting that rather than this place being Atlantis by itself, it was likely the capital or the administrative headquarters of Atlantis, which probably stretched further than we think, perhaps even as far as the Canary Islands and even Madeira, which you mentioned earlier. Mainstream scholars and archaeologists will say that this is a geological feature and it's volcanic in nature. But it doesn't appear, nothing like this appears anywhere else in the world, not one place. So if we're saying it's a geological feature, you would think there'd be at least one other place where we've seen this supposedly natural concentric circles. Now, legend states as well that Atlantis was founded by the gods, and they lived there. And this reminds me of like Zep Tepi, the first time the ancient Egyptians spoke about, and the first king apparently of Atlantis was Atlas. So again, we've got that root word, and it's also important to point out that around this time, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago, the Sahara was very livable. It was green, even called it the Green Sahara era, and this stretched right through again to ancient Egypt. There's water erosion on the Sphinx, for example, and this could only happen with steady rain, and this only happened during the Green Sahara region. So that tells us, or suggests to us that the Sphinx could be a lot older than mainstream science or mainstream archaeology is currently telling us. And there is also evidence around the Richat structure of flooding and things of that nature. We'll come back to that in a moment. Now, there are further details, though, that match this Richat structure. For example, in Plato's writing, he said that at the south of Atlantis, there is a waterway which stretched out to the sea. When you look at the Richat structure, there is just such an opening, and it goes off. It's 250 miles to the Atlantic Ocean, but it does stretch out to the sea. And some researchers will suggest that part of the West African coast was underwater around this time. There's salt deposits there, there's mollusks there. So, the inland, or the coast, could have been much further inland. Writings also say that to the north of Atlantis there was mountains, and we have the Atlas Mountains to the north, exactly where Plato said they would be. It's also worth noting similar words, so Atlantis being one, but there's Adar, Attar, Atlas, Atlantic, Atlantes, Atarantes. These words all are place names or local to this region, and they don't appear anywhere else in the world, only here. So again, we've got that at root word, which it's hard to ignore. Plato also said that Atlantis was largely built from red and black stone. When you go to the Richat structure, this red and black stone, admittedly not in ruins of buildings, just stone, raw materials, it is indeed red and black. So again, we've got another detail that kind of matches. And there's an ancient map from Rome, and I'll flash it up on the screen. And this place is Atlantis. They call it Atlante, in the exact location as the Richat structure is today. So Roman maps were aware of it. And we might also think that Plato said it was beyond, he didn't call it the Strait of Gibraltar, the pillars of Atlas, he was saying, but to get from Greece to the west coast of Africa, you would have to sail through there. You would have to go beyond the Strait of Gibraltar and then around to the West African coast. So basically, there seems to be so much evidence pointing to the fact that the Richat structure could indeed have been Atlantis. So people are saying, okay, well, where's all the ancient ruins? Where's all the buildings? Where's all the records? Well, for once, these guys have some answers to this. Now, some research suggests that if there was a flood, however it was caused, it came from the northeast. And you can see water damage on around the ridge structure, which suggests there was, water pressure on the land there. And that would have swept everything away from the northeast to the southeast and into the Atlantic Ocean. Because it would have been so powerful, there'd be little left. It's just been distributed. And then you add into the fact the coastlines have changed. So they're saying, well, that's where the structures have gone. Not to mention the amount of time that's passed. The records, though, and this is again interesting, they're theorizing that, assuming that the water came from the north, so that's cut off. They're not going to escape that way. Any survivors would have to go east, west, or south. West would take them obviously across the ocean to the South Americas and possibly Mexico. South, you would find Mali and Timbuktu, and there was a great library there hundreds of years ago. And obviously, east would take them to Egypt. We know the Spanish destroyed all the records of the South Americas, so any records that may have come from Atlantis will no longer be there. In the 16th century, around the same time, the Moroccans destroyed the library in Timbuktu. Records gone, and obviously most people know about Alexandria, which is almost certainly where such records would have been kept. So they're kind of saying, no, we're not having this kind of stuff from the mainstream that, well, where's this, where's that? They've actually given, I think, quite compelling, not explanations, but possibilities as to why there's no records. So, I mean, is Atlantis real? It's the question that's, people have wrestled with for centuries. We thought Troy was a fictional place, but then we discovered it. Göbekli Tepe is suggesting that civilization is much older than we think, around the 10,000, 12,000 years. So, yeah, I'd like to see much more research done on the Richat structure, because not much has actually gone ahead. We think about all the ground penetrating radar and things. And then if you think about the Sahara as it stretches all the way over to Egypt, a lot of that land's inaccessible, or it's in the hands of local tribes and we can't just go in and do what we want. Or the Egyptian government are known for being very tight with research and not always granting permission, for archaeological digs, really. So it makes me wonder what we would find if we did take that strip of land right across Africa from the Richat all the way to Egypt. But I found this fascinating. I was reading this and then I had to go back and read it again, because I thought that's the most compelling argument I've ever read for where Atlantis might be and what it might have been. So I'm sure you've got an interest in Atlantis, Paul. I mean, everybody seems to. So.
I think so. I think you're right, Marcus. Excuse me. There's always a grain of truth that a lot of these legends are built on, and you found some of them. The common names.
Absolutely, yeah.
The common names, I hadn't heard that before, but that's a good one. It's one of the reasons why I like biblical archaeology. I'm not necessarily interested in the religious aspect of it, but all those stories, many of those stories have a grain of truth. And if we can find the original grain of truth, that should point us in the directions to find more of the truth, or to find out the actual truth, that it really wasn't what we think it is. Yeah. But we don't know. So I like the quest. The quest and the search is great. And Atlantis, you're not going to find too many people who don't know what Atlantis, one of the stories of Atlantis. So we should be able to raise the money. I think ultimately that's what it is, to continue to learn about that and do it not just for financial gain, but for the quest for knowledge and the quest for learning more about humanity. That's what I really like. So I like that. Though. Excellent. I agree with you. More. Those aren't coincidences. There were too many facts in there for all of that to be interconnected by coincidences. So I think that excellent choice for a historical story there.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. And I agree, as you say, that I think if we were to discover the reality of Atlantis, it would help fill in so many blanks, of our collective history, and there is still so many blanks there. So let's hope that research does go away. But another quest that's been going on for centuries and will continue is that of the Ark of the Covenant. And I believe you've got a really good story on this, Paul, actually.
Oh, man, Marcus, again, another quest. There's two quests in the Bible that are still going on now. One is the hunt for the Holy Grail, and the other one is the hunt for the Ark of the Covenant. And I shouldn't have to explain either one of those because I think everybody has seen all of the Indiana Jones movies. So, uh, but there was a news story recently about another place where the Ark might be, because obviously, uh, at least to us, of the general public, no one has come out and said with proof, here's the Ark, and held it up, or it's right there, and we've had many witnesses. So all we know is it was supposed to contain the Ten Commandments. It was a wooden box with decorated with solid gold and ornamental gold all over it. So they obviously cared about what might have been in it. There's many theories as to and many different stories as to where it might be, but this was in the news just recently, a new one that I had never heard of, but the more I researched, I don't know why we didn't talk about it more, that the Ark of the Covenant exists, and it's not in Washington D.C., it's not in Europe, it's not in Rome, but it's on an island in the Pacific Ocean. It's the island of Malta, and they claimed that ancient travelers from Israel carried the ark 8,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean in canoes 2,000 years ago. So my first thought is, really, that this doesn't sound like plausible to me. But Malta is in the Solomon Islands. Okay, so there's a biblical connection right there. King Solomon. Turns out there's more than a connection there. So uh, that particular island and those islands, that archipelago, I think it is, goes the history of that goes back to 30,000 BCE when people from New Guinea traveled there and settled there. So it's originally part of that group of people in the Southern Pacific. First European who came there was Spanish navigator Alvaro de Mendana de Dinera, who I had never heard of. He came from Peru and first visited the island in 1568. Other people came because he spread the word that the wealth there was wealth on these islands as much as King Solomon had. So that's where the King Solomon and the name Solomon Islands came from. That this guy bragged that the wealth of Solomon was available on these islands. And he said it could even be the name, the city of Ophir that was mentioned in the Bible. So he even gave somewhat of a link. And I said it's always about the money. That's every quest is at some point is about the money. But there's a new film out, locally produced in the island, documentary called The Lost Temple Discovery, and it looks at mysterious stone ruins that they found on this particular island that people believe are remnants of a sanctuary that was built modeled after King Solomon's temple to hold the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, and these ruins do exist. The legend is that these travelers came across from Israel. They constructed the temple hidden deep in the woods. That the jungles on these islands. And there's a group of people there, the Tobaita people, in the northern part of the island, who believe that they descended from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Now, there's a lot of people who believe that they descended from the lost 10 tribes. Everybody wants credit for that somehow. So they're not alone in that. But there are some people within this group who speak an ancient form of Hebrew, and there's Hebrew words scattered within their vocabulary. You know, of all places to go to a Polynesian island and hear Yiddish, I never thought that would be the case. Apparently, that's another little shred of truth there, a little shred of evidence. Their movement, called the All People's Prayer Assembly, believe, and it used to be called the Deep Sea Canoe Movement. So patterned after the trip. They're the true believers, the true keepers of this story. No physical evidence, though, other than the ruins and the folklore and the legends. but so the documentary is coming out soon, I believe. If that's not the location, though, where is the Ark of the Covenant? What the quest have gone to various places. One of the top places, if you do any research on it, is in Ethiopia. There's a church called the Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which has long claimed to possess the Ark. Um, the It's kept in a treasury, and there's a group of monks, and they pass the duty on from one monk to another to guard the treasury. So no one's allowed to go in there except that particular monk, I think. Um, the many Now many people have said that somehow they were able to get into the church and see the ark. The majority have said that it's nothing more than an empty box, but the people still believe it. The monks still protect it, and there's a lot of people who think that that is the actual ark in Ethiopia. There's also people in South Africa and Zimbabwe, the Lemba people, who believe that their ancestors brought the ark um, from Israel and hid it in the mountains in the Mgi Mountains, wherever that must be in Zimbabwe or in South Africa, and that's where the ark is hidden. There's also a biblical reference from the book of Maccabees that the ark was taken to Arabia, and it's located there, but I don't know of any church that claims or a temple claiming to have it. There's also claims in England, of all places, where the ark may be hidden. The Basilica of St. John Lateran, which would survive the pillages of Rome, but eventually they said the ark was lost when it was the basilica was burned down in the 5th century, and no one knows where it was taken after that. There's also stories of the ark being in Ireland, of all places, at the grave of an Egyptian princess by the name of Tea Tefi, who, according to Irish legend, came to Ireland in the 6th century BC and married the Irish king Eramon. And she brought the ark with her, and it's somewhere located, somewhere hidden in Ireland. If I had to bet, my guess would be that if the Ark of the Covenant really does exist, it's in Rome, and it's in the Vatican City somewhere, because they've got everything there. They've got one of everything. They've got the aliens, they've got the ships, they got all that good stuff. They probably have Bigfoot, and they probably have another pig man that we don't know about hidden in the vaults of the Vatican. I don't know, but that's another one of those ancient stories that continues on to this day. And I would like to see that quest continue as well, not just in the movies, but with real scientists and real archaeologists and real, I don't want to say reliable, but people who can do a better scientific analysis of these places without desecrating the temple. I want to respect people's religion as much as everybody else, but I also want to, I think people would want to know the real story. I don't think it would cause an economic collapse to know that the temple in Ethiopia isn't the real ark, any more so than it would cause a public panic if it really was in the Vatican. Maybe it wouldn't be storming it. I would hope not. Maybe the Nazis, if they saw the movie, they'd be storming it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant,
Yeah.
it just fascinates. It fascinates me, and it fascinates lots of people. It's interesting you mentioned Ireland and the connections to the Egyptian prince or princess, excuse me. Some researchers have pointed out connections between Ireland and Scotland, even down to red hair, pale skin, and Egyptian royalty. And I know we don't always imagine Egyptian royalty like that, but they have, it's got. I'll put descriptions in the links in the description because it's good reading that, and they go into a lot of detail. But yeah, I've heard lots of locations where the ark could be. Like Roslin Chapel's another one in Scotland. They don't claim to have the ark, but there is a tribe. I believe they're in China, around the Himalayas, and once a year they take a box out of a secret place and they walk up this hill with it, and it basically looks like the Ark of the Covenant. And so what I'm going to suggest is if you look at the research of people, it's historians, some mainstream, but maybe alternative ones. They say that the Ark of the Covenant actually originated in Egypt, and it was an Egyptian device, for want of a better word. And not only that, they suggest that there wasn't just one, but there was multiple arcs. Now obviously the one that went on the Exodus that was given by those on the Exodus. If we assume for a moment that that is a factual, event and it took place, they probably then. I don't want to use the word hijacked, but they kind of took the arc and the meaning of the arc for themselves. Whereas originally it probably wasn't what Moses was saying. Although some research on Moses, and I mean, this could go off on a tangent here, but I mean, Moses, for example, he could actually. Some people say he was an Egyptian prince. They even look at Thutmose, which is son of Tut, and he just got rid of the first part of his name and became Moses. So that's something for another time. So yeah, if there was multiple Arks of the Covenant, then they could have found their way to all kinds of places around the world, and there could be several in the church in Ethiopia, in Roslin Chapel, perhaps in Ireland, and each one thinking they've got the Ark when perhaps they've just got one of the Arks. The Ethiopian church is interesting though. Graham Hancock, who you'll know this, but he did a lot of research on this. Sure. And, the book, The Seventh Seal, but he again put a compelling argument across, saying that he. I know this isn't proof by any stretch of the imagination, but saying he looked in the eyes of these priests and he just knew. He just knew that at least they believed. And he also went on to say that, a lot of them fell ill. And people say that the Ark is radioactive and you shouldn't, biblical legends say you can't approach it without a proper attire. So perhaps there is something to that. But yeah, I don't think it'd cause any type of collapse. I mean, it might have some effects on religion, maybe, if we find out that it's a technical device, or if we find out there's more than one, and if we find out it's just nothing more than a nice decorated box, and that's all it does. But yeah, I'd be up for that. I'd support that if I had the money to do so. I would love to get to the bottom of the Ark of the Covenant because, like you say, it's remained with us like Atlantis for centuries. And so you got to think that there's some grain of truth if it's almost like in our psyche as a collective. So yeah, I mean, fascinating stuff, Paul. Really, that.
Well, if we have the budget to do some research on our own, I want to go to the Solomon Islands. I think we should. That would be our first place to go.
I'd be up for seeing that.
3 or 4 weeks, have a nice cruise to get there, and.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Well,
all great stories this week, Marcus, as always.
Definitely has been a fascinating whirlwind trip around the world with all these strange events. And Paul, look, thanks for joining me as always. I look forward to doing it again next week.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. And I'm sure we'll have some more great stories for our next episode.
I'm sure too. And as always, thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Tell everybody you know about us. Check out MeTimeForTheMind.com. Check out Paul's work on Substack. And make sure you join us next week for more exciting and strange news stories from around the world. Until next time, goodbye and take care.